Hey ladies, welcome to The Power of the Ask, the podcast where we ditch the waiting and embrace the asking for what we truly deserve.
Welcome to The Power of the Ask.
Welcome everyone to The Power of the Ask podcast, the podcast that helps you get what you need financially and personally. We are so glad that you're here today. My name is Lisa Zeiderman. I am managing partner of Miller Zeiderman, and I am one of the co-hosts with my dear friend, Precious Williams, the killer pitchmaster. Hi, Precious.
I love it, Queen Lisa. Hey, Lisa. And I'm Precious Williams, the killer pitch master and the proud founder and CEO of the Perfect Pitch Group. And welcome back. This week, we're excited to bring to you Mayra Alejandra García of Debt Free Latina. Did you hear that? Debt Free Latina, and host of the Debt Free Latina podcast. And so let me give you a little background on this dynamic guest. Mayra Alejandra García, a Latina from East Los Angeles, California, now living in Levine, Arizona, transformed her life from significant debt to financial expertise. Ooh, that sounds juicy. In 2010, her family faced $21,000 in debt, but through a strategic plan, they paid it off in 17 months. I can't even believe it. They downsized to a small apartment, enabling them to later purchase their current home with a 20% down payment and a 15-year loan. 15. Living debt-free has increased their net worth and given them financial independence. Since 2017, Mayra has been sharing her knowledge by becoming a certified financial coach. We only bring you the best guests. Welcome, Mayra. We're so happy to have you as a guest on the Power of the Ask podcast, powered by what? Savvy Ladies.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
So Mayra, I have so many questions for you, but the first question I have for you is, how has growing up bilingual and bicultural with your father supporting your grandmother in Mexico shaped your views on basically cultural traditions and managing your finances? Has this had an impact on you?
It has. And I think that it really built this empathy towards my family. I mean, family is everything, but there's a very nice balance that I was able to see where my father was able to support my grandparents in Mexico, but at the same time didn't enable them and didn't enable the rest of the family that was there. And so I was able to really see this get done well. And I know that there's a lot of, you try not to enable people, but there's this sense of care. And not only did my father move to the US to provide his future generations, right? Me, my siblings, and the next generation, but he also wanted to make sure that my grandparents and honor them. And that was one way that in our culture, we honor our ancestors by caring for them. So that was what I saw and what I help clients do when that is an important topic that comes up.
I have to say, before you jump in, Precious, one thing, because this enabling concept is so important. And I see it with so many people who are trying to help family members that they actually enable them. And, it's been I would say one of my biggest balancing acts is not to enable, for example, my daughter. We want to help, but you don't want to enable. And I'm so sorry, Precious, to jump on you like that, but
no, I think that's a dope thing to talk about, for real.
Yeah. The enabling, I would say, when my dad did get asked, could you send this or that? It was more of trying to find out the whys, wanting to make sure that if it was my uncle who was asking for something, it was always with, if the house needed something, my dad would provide it. If it was just for other reasons, he would say, I'm sorry, I don't have it this month, but, I will try, or whatever it was. There was always this sense of my dad always knew and had this, I don't know if it was just gut feeling of when he would help and when he wouldn't. And there was many times that I saw my dad say, no, like we're sending money for food and making sure the bills are paid and just make sure my mom and dad are good. And so That was his main priority. Everything else was like a case by case basis.
I really like where we just went right now. I grew up with extreme independence. There was no one who was just going to give money for anything. And so the enabling to extreme independence, extreme, you got to do it on your own, and just saying that there is still a middle ground. And I'm glad that your father had that gut reaction. I think that comes from experience too, of knowing who's coming with a real problem, who's coming to have everybody else solve it, and they're not going to do something on their own. Well, we talked a little bit about when I was reading your bio, Queen, about some of the challenges and some of your personal financial journey. What were some of the other challenges that you personally faced, and how did you learn to overcome them?
I think the number one and the hardest thing I had to learn was to budget. I didn't know how to put a budget together. Even though I saw this interaction with my dad and my grandparents, money was still a taboo topic in my home. And so it wasn't really talked about. I moved on and got married and had to figure things out on my own. But even, after a few years into my marriage, I had never built a budget ever. So that was very challenging when I kept hearing you should build a budget, but I didn't know where to start. And that was my biggest challenge. It's like, where do I go? What do I do? And so the very first thing I did was I just grabbed a paper and a pen and I just started writing everything out. And then as I started seeing things happen, I would start accounting for them. So it was like with experience, my budget got better. But then in my career, I learned Excel and I learned other things. So I started just adding tools through my toolbox. And so my journey has evolved from just paper pen to now I love my Excel sheet. I know there's apps, I know there's other things, but my Excel sheet works for me.
Can you tell us what encouraged you to start Debt-Free Latina? First, tell us what is Debt-Free Latina, and then and then how did you actually get started, and what made you start it?
Yeah. So back in 2010, when I started learning about budgeting, just that you should budget, I was looking for resources of like, who's talking about this? And I mean, Google was fairly new even then. Like there wasn't a whole lot of blogs about this at the time. And so I was like, nobody's talking about this. Like, I wish that I could just find somebody that I could relate to, that could talk about it in a format that relates to me. And that was like the first seed of that kind of was planted, right? And so fast forward a few years later, I was like, I should probably talk about this. Now that I've have several years of budgeting experience, maybe I should do something about it. And so I got certified and went through the whole process. And then a few years later after that, I started the podcast. But Debt-Free Latina is a financial literacy company. And so what we do is we have the podcast, we have free resources like a budgeting template that is on my website. And then I also offer one-on-one coaching. And that's where my heart is. Like, I want to help those that have never budgeted before, that were Mayra in 2010. And so that's where my heart is. I know that, I know the struggle. I know that you may feel lost if you're in that position. I know exactly what that feels like. So that's where I love to help.
Well, I love knowing that on Debt-Free Latina that you do offer the one-on-one coaching, and you do have the podcast, and you do have the budgeting sheets. Where were you when I was growing up? Where were you? Because I definitely needed that help, and I'm Black. I'm like, listen, I want to be debt-free Black too, like Debt-Free Latina. Now that we're in what some consider harsh economic times, what are some of the things that you are incorporating into Debt-Free Latina that are so helpful now? In the last 4 years with pandemic, economic downturn, social unrest, inflation, recession, and all these things that are happening, people losing their jobs. What are some of those new things that you've incorporated into Debt-Free Latina that helps people be able to breathe better?
I think that first and foremost, like, it's okay to do one thing at a time. I feel like the overwhelm is so stressful that I start with, you can save. You can just stop what you're doing and save money. Like, you don't have to go right into debt freedom right away or debt payoff, right? You don't. You need some sort of cushion should something come up. You don't rely on your credit card. And so there's steps that you need to take, but that is an amount that is very unique to everybody. There are some homeowners, there are some the people that, have children, some don't. And so just looking at your situation, you kind of have to gauge, what does that risk look like in your life? Do you have children? Then you probably should have more saved up. Do you not? Well, then you probably have, just you to care for, probably a smaller place. Who knows? There's a lot of variables. And so I start with saving. You have to have some sort of cushion. And then we can get to the debt payoff. But some of the resources that I have is, like I mentioned, the budget sheet, which, like I said, Excel is not for everybody. But at least when you download that, you can see the different categories that most people have expenses in. And so that can help you if you're a paper and pen person, like I was at the beginning. You can write all of the different categories that are on that sheet, and you can say, okay, these apply to me and these don't, so I'm not going to include those. And then just, really start allocating and seeing if that's something that you can, maybe start saving for. Or if you can't, like, if people might just eliminate clothing from their budget for a while because they have enough. And so that's fine. But having a list of, you are eventually going to need something. So in the future, when you're able, maybe have some sort of sinking fund or a little fund of some sort for clothing in the future.
Are there financial myths or misconceptions that you've encountered within or even outside of your community when it comes to managing debt? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, one of the very common ones I hear is that you need money to make money, and you'll always be in debt, or you'll always have a car payment. Those are the most common ones. And when I hear the one about you need money to make money, and although sometimes that is true, you also can learn to save. And saving is such a muscle that it takes experience and time to really get good at saving. And so sometimes I might say, you may need to pause there. You don't need to go into debt to make this investment, whatever it is, whether it's a business idea or whatever. How about we save and build that muscle so that you have the ability to execute on your idea? And so there's, you don't need to be in debt forever. And I've kind of proven that. And that's kind of like what I always talk about in my podcast. Like, you don't knock debt freedom until you try it. Like, just don't knock it. It's so, like, it really is the word freedom. I don't have very much stress. It's like this, people don't even know what that feels like right now. The calls that I get, people are so stressed out, they can't sleep. And it's like those little things that we don't talk about enough. It's like, I could sleep very well. And like, those are just things that we take for granted.
Ladies, are you ready to take control of your future? Do you dream of financial stability, freedom, and a life that truly deserves you?
For over 20 years, Savvy Ladies has empowered women from all walks of life to make smart financial choices, achieve our goals, and build a brighter future.
We built Savvy Ladies as a community of women supporting women. We offer free financial educational programs, a trusted helpline, and guidance and advice from America's top financial professionals.
You can access the financial helpline at savvyladies.org or where you get your apps under Savvy Ladies. Savvy Ladies equips you with the knowledge, confidence, and support you need to thrive. So don't wait. Join Savvy Ladies today and start building your financial confidence and well-being now.
I'm listening to you and I kind of want to slow it down.
Okay.
I don't want people to listen, and this sounds like a very Pollyanna story. Everything is so well now. You and your family did something so incredible to go from $21,000 in debt to owning a home and paying 20% down. The fact that you can sleep at night and you feel good in your own skin. What did it really take to get there? Like, if you can kind of walk us through some steps, because I want people to emotionally hear. Because sometimes I feel like when we talk about finance and those who have made it to the top, there might be a disconnect emotionally from what they had to truly overcome, and we skip over it. So could you tell us about some of those personal habits, some of those family habits, some of the real heart-stopping decisions y'all really had to make in order for you to be where you are today? And the second part of that question is, what is something that you've been so astounded that you also have been able to do, you and your family have been able to do because of those personal habits and decisions?
Okay. This is so good. I would say one of the things that I had to learn fairly early in my budgeting journey was stop impulse buying. Just because it's in front of you doesn't mean that you need to buy it right now. I remember walking into the Arizona Mills, which is a local mall here. And I remember walking into Eddie Bauer, and it was a winter and I really wanted a coat. And I just remember thinking, I'm in Arizona. How many weeks am I going to use this coat? But it was like at the point, I had it in my hands and I thought, it's not in the budget. How am I going to do this? At the time, I didn't know how to move things around in my budget. I didn't know all the different things I know now, but it was like the one moment I was like, no, it's not in the budget. I need to put it back. And at that moment, I can walk into a store now and I don't feel like I have to buy something. That was like it changed for me. Now, your second part of the question was, what have I been able to do now because I have built these habits? I am in 2024 for my family has been our travel era. We didn't travel much before. For 20 years, I've been raising kids. And I didn't travel. We were always on a budget. Something was happening. I had to save for college, whatever it was. There was always something we were doing. And this year, we have made it a goal to go somewhere outside of the Phoenix area at least once a month.
Wow.
And so I've been traveling, and sometimes it's this month. It's like twice this month that we're going to go somewhere. But we have made an effort. I can tell you, January through now and what we have through November planned out, at least one weekend we go somewhere.
Good for you. Good for you. You know, we see so many people. I'm a divorce attorney, so and we see so many people who are facing financial uncertainty and debt, and certainly through Savvy Ladies. You know, people come to us all the time who are so stressed and anxious about their financial situation. And luckily, they say when they leave us and after they've been connected to a financial professional to answer those financial questions, they feel less stressed and they feel more at ease, which is really what you've been talking about. This idea that you can have this freedom of pressure and anxiety and this feeling that you can travel now, right? Because you don't have all this debt that you're like, losing sleep over at night. There's a message here, right? There's a message that you are really providing to others at this point. And I want to get what that clear message is from you of those people who are still struggling with debt, financial uncertainty. They just don't know how they're going to pay their bills, this month. They don't know whether they're going to have their jobs or whether interest rates have increased to the point where they can't make those mortgage payments. What message do you have for our listeners as to how to deal with debt and financial uncertainty?
It really comes down to a plan. You have to have a plan. You have to have a written plan with what it is that your goal is and how you're going to attack it. And you really cannot get away from it. And it takes work. It takes a lot of time, especially at the beginning. Reconciling my budget is something I do at least weekly, if not probably every other day. And it just becomes like 5 minutes now where I just look over my bank and I make sure it's matching up with the budget and I make any adjustments. And so don't underestimate the power of a plan. And I know the word budget sometimes is a little like hard to hear, but really a budget is simply a plan.
Thank you.
Great answer. And as we come to the end of the Power of the Ask podcast, we love to ask our guests these two special questions. Why is the power of the ask so important to women, especially financially? And why is it so critical? We love to hear your answers.
Well, it's important because women, we tend to be natural helpers. And I feel like for me, I'm a natural problem solver too. So it's important to have that partnership with someone that just gets us. And us women, we're wired a little different and we might, stress over some things. We have so many different hats. And so we need to be able to have that just ability to ask the question, ask people that have been there before or that just are one step ahead of you. It doesn't even have to be a complete expert, right? You just ask the question, don't be scared. And we're all rooting for you.
As you can see, everyone, this is why we bring great guests on the Power of the Ask podcast powered by Savvy Ladies. My co-host, Lisa Zeiderman, and I are delighted to ask the kind of questions you want to actually have answered. We know there's so much going on in the world right now and people are feeling frustrated. And then you meet a queen like Mayra who went from being in debt, her and her family went from being in debt to actually living a debt-free life. Please check out her resources, her website, and also know that as dark as it can get, when you do have a plan, when you do have resources and you can get coaching, don't forget to go to our Savvy Ladies website, www.savvyladies.org. Check out our financial empowerment resources. We also have, and Queen Lisa, I'm forgetting what it's called, but you call in and you have these questions.
Our helpline.
You may be in transition. You may have lost our helpline. See, that's what I'm talking about. See, Queen always.
Our special sauce.
Helpline. Our special sauce. So we have a helpline for you, and we're bringing you the type of guests that you see that the struggles that they've had to overcome to be where they are today. The fact that this queen says she sleeps well at night because they've made the decision, and because of that, you see that her and her family are vacationing now. She's reconciling her budget, and she's made it a priority to live a debt-free life. Thank you, Queen Mayra, for coming on our show. We're so happy to have you, and don't forget, y'all, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to what? Come listen and come view the Power of the Ask podcast powered by Savvy Ladies. You can see us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We love to have you back again. Thank you so very much and keep coming back. It gets better and better. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Power of the Ask, ladies.
Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to spread the love with #PowerOfTheAsk.